I want to tell you a story that changed my life. And I'm telling it in my own words, not to impress you, but to remind you that your voice, no matter how unsure, how shaky, or how imperfect it is today, can become the most powerful tool you own. This story begins at a time in my life when I felt invisible. Not because people were ignoring me, but because I was hiding inside myself. I had dreams, ambitions, ideas, intelligence, everything people said you need to succeed. But I didn't have a voice. I didn't have the courage to express myself, and that silence slowly began to suffocate every part of my life. I remember my first job in Canada. I walked into the office with hopes so high they practically touched the ceiling. I had spent years working hard, building skills, earning degrees, and proving myself in different places. But the moment I sat in a meeting for the first time, I realized something. None of that mattered if I couldn't speak. Everyone around me spoke confidently. They shared opinions, even if those opinions were average. They spoke with certainty, even when their ideas weren't perfect. They used their voice to be seen. But me? Even when I had something valuable to say, my throat tightened, my mind went blank. I feared judgment. I feared mistakes. And most of all, I feared sounding less than. So I stayed quiet. I told myself, it's okay, your work will speak for you. But work doesn't speak. People speak. And if you don't speak, your work stays silent too. For weeks, I attended meeting after meeting, like a shadow in the room. I took notes, I listened, I nodded, and I pretended that being quiet was part of my personality. But it wasn't. It was fear disguised as silence. I still remember one particular meeting. It was about an upcoming project that everyone seemed excited about. While people were sharing ideas, one thought kept building in my mind. It was clear, practical, and I knew it could solve half the problems they were discussing. I rehearsed the sentence in my head dozens of times. If we restructure the workflow, we can save time. Simple, right? But when I lifted my eyes to speak, something heavy pulled me down again. My lips didn't move. Someone else spoke instead, and everyone nodded as if that idea belonged to them. I walked out of that meeting feeling like I was suffocating. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, replaying the whole scene again and again. I kept thinking, why didn't I say it? Why didn't I even try? And the painful realization hit me. I wasn't losing opportunities because I lacked talent. I was losing them because I lacked courage to communicate. A few days later, something unexpected happened. My coworker, Sarah, approached me. She was someone who always radiated warmth, someone who had a way of making you feel seen, even when you didn't want to be seen. She said gently, "You know, you're really smart. You have ideas. I've watched you hide. Why don't you share them?" I froze. No one had ever said that to me. I didn't even know she noticed. I shrugged and said, "I don't know. I just don't feel confident speaking." She smiled softly and said, "Then let's fix that. You don't need to give a speech. Just start with one sentence a day." She tapped her notebook lightly and said, "One sentence. That's all you need." That night, her words followed me home. One sentence. It sounded simple, almost too simple. But I decided to try. For the next few days, I practiced speaking out loud at home. I stood in front of the mirror and repeated sentences from podcasts. I wasn't trying to sound perfect. I was trying to sound like someone who believed in themselves. It felt awkward at first. My voice wavered, my pronunciation felt strange, but I didn't stop. I created a rule for myself. Every day, I will speak one sentence in a meeting. No matter how uncomfortable, no matter how shaky. Just one. The first day, I barely managed to whisper it. The second day, I spoke a little louder. The third day, I added one more sentence. Slowly, something strange began happening. When I spoke, people actually listened. They didn't laugh. They didn't judge. Instead, they nodded. They responded. They valued what I said. And that tiny positive reinforcement sparked something in me I hadn't felt in years. One evening, as I walked home, I caught myself smiling at nothing. I felt proud. I felt alive. I felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself that I had buried under fear. But change is never smooth. There were days when I stumbled over words, days when my accent felt too strong, days when I skipped my turn out of hesitation. But I kept returning. I kept trying. I kept speaking, even if my voice trembled. One day, during a major meeting, my manager looked around the room and asked, "Any suggestions?" I felt the familiar wave of anxiety rise in my chest, but something inside me pushed back. I remembered my promise to myself. I took a deep breath, raised my hand, and said, "I have an idea." For the first time, I didn't overthink. I didn't rehearse. I simply spoke. The room fell quiet. Every eye turned to me. My heart felt like it was beating outside my chest, but I kept going. When I finished, my manager looked genuinely impressed. "That's a brilliant thought," he said. "Let's move forward with that." Those words felt like sunlight breaking through years of darkness. From that day onward, everything began to shift. I didn't become an extrovert overnight. I didn't become perfect, but I became visible. People started asking for my opinions. My name began appearing in emails. I was included in discussions, decisions, planning. I began leading small tasks, which then grew into bigger responsibilities. The confidence I gained in meetings began affecting my daily life. I found myself speaking more clearly at the grocery store, at the bank, at social gatherings. I no longer avoided conversations. I no longer feared questions. I no longer shrank into corners. Communication had awakened something new in me. Months later, I received a leadership opportunity, something I never even dreamed of aiming for. A position that once seemed too far, too big, too intimidating, suddenly became reachable. And all because I began with one sentence. As time passed, I realized something even deeper. Communication is not just about speaking English. It's about expressing yourself with honesty and clarity. It's about allowing yourself to be seen. It's about opening doors with your words. Years of silence had taught me to hide. Months of communication taught me to rise. Today, I mentor others who feel the same fear I once felt. New immigrants, shy individuals, people with accents, people who think they're not good enough to speak. I look into their uncertain eyes and I tell them, your accent is not a problem. Your silence is. I teach them the exact small steps Sarah taught me, and I remind them, you don't need the perfect words. You just need the courage to say them. Communication didn't just help me build a career. It helped me build a life, a confident life, a connected life, a life where I am no longer invisible. And if you're listening to this, I want to say something that I wish someone had told me sooner. Your voice matters. It matters more than your mistakes. It matters more than your accent. It matters more than your fear. Speak, even if your voice shakes, even if your heart races, even if your mind doubts you. Because the moment you start communicating, your world begins to change. And one day, you will look back and realize that the journey from silence to confidence started with something very, very small. Just one sentence, one moment of courage.